even at the most introductory level, requires familiarity with the Hebrew alphabet. To study Kabbalah in depth, one must also be able to read and understand basic texts like the Bible and the Mishnah. Though Hebrew was not a spoken language for almost 1500 years, including Kabbalists, wrote some of the most magnificent Hebrew texts in existence. Consequently, to study the Torah in general and Kabbalah in particular, speaking Hebrew is not as necessary as being able to correctly read and understand it. As befitting an introductory text, we have kept our instruction of Hebrew to a minimum, and have tried to stress those aspects of the language that reveal its mystical and creative power. The Hebrew alphabet 1, called the Aleph Bet, after its first two letters, comprises 22 letters. These letters are all consonants. Vowels are generally indicated with diacritical marks above, beneath, or after letters. However, 4 of the 22 consonants are used to indicate vowel sounds as well. Each letter possesses a numerical value, which is very significant in understanding the hidden meaning of each word. Indeed, Hebrew words and phrases can be compared based on their numerical values. This technique is called gematria, and is one of the cornerstones of Kabbalistic analysis and thought. 570. What you need to know about Kabbalah. Sefer Yetzirah explains that the 22 Hebrew letters are the basic energy building blocks of creation, whose combinations and permutations represent all the creative forces that God used when He, as it were, spoke creation into being. Kabbalah teaches that words formed by combinations and permutations of letters are the vessels through which the creative process continues to take place. Hebrew, unlike Roman languages like English, is logically structured. It begins with 22 letters that act as the building blocks. These 22 letters then join to form 231 sharim, gates. Finally, 3-letter shorashim, roots, are formed from the gates. Every single word in Hebrew is based on a letter, gate root, with a predominant majority being directly based on a root. Thus, to truly understand the underlying logic and meaning of a word in Hebrew, it is necessary to reconstruct its root. Sefer Yetzirah also divides the 22 Hebrew letters into the following 3 groups based on both grammatical and spiritual considerations: 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, 12 simple letters. The various letters are further identified with corresponding elements, such as fire and water, with corresponding gifts, such as wisdom and wealth, with corresponding senses, such as hearing and sight, as well as with corresponding body parts. The 3 mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, correspond to the 3 primal elements of creation, air, water, and fire respectively, and to the 3 general divisions of the body. Chest corresponds to air, abdomen to water, and head to fire. Letter element part of body Aleph, air chest Mem, water abdomen Shin, fire head. Chapter 5, Letters building blocks of the universe. 71 The 7 double letters, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, Resh, Tav, correspond in the body to the 7 gateways of the head. Each one serves as a gateway for one of the senses of sight, hearing, smell, and taste, the sensations of external reality, allowing them to enter the consciousness of the psyche. Each gateway, when sanctified, also serves as a portal through which to receive a divine gift or blessing as follows: letter gift gateway Bet. Wisdom right eye Gimel. Wealth right ear Dalet. Children right nostril Kaf. Life left eye Pei. Sovereignty left ear Resh. Peace left nostril Tav. Grace mouth. The 12 simple letters, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Lamed, Nun, Samek, Awin, Zadik, Kuf, correspond to 12 limbs and organs of the body. Each controls, often in a most mysterious way, for no overt relationship is apparent, a spiritual faculty of the soul, also the particularized talent of each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Letter faculty limb organ He. Speech, expression right leg Vav. Thought right kidney Zayin. Walking, progress left leg Chet. Sight, perception right hand Tet. Hearing, comprehension left kidney Yud. Action, rectification left hand Lamed. Touch, sexuality gallbladder Nun. Smell, sensitivity intestine Samek. Sleep, dreaming lower bowels Awin. Anger, Indignation liver zodic. Eating, taste stomach cuff. Laughter, exuberance spleen 72. What you need to know about Kabbalah Gematria, the numerical value of the Hebrew letters as noted above. Each of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical value, making it possible for Hebrew letters and words to be translated into numbers. This technique is called Gematria. There are several systems of Gematria, and it would take a book in itself to explain them all. The system generally used is the absolute value or the normative value system. In this system, the letters are assigned numerical values in order as follows: Aleph, 1 Yud, 10 Kaf, 100 Bet, 2 Kaf, 20 Rish, 200 Gimel, 3 Lamed, 30 Shin, 300 Dalet, 4 Mem, 40 Tav, 400 He, 5 Nun, 50 Final Kaf, 500 Vav, 6 Samek, 60 Final Mem, 600 Zayin, 7 Awen, 70 Final Nun, 700 Chet, 8 Pei, 80 Final Pei, 800 Tet, 9 Zodic, 90 Final Zodic, 900 in Kabbalah. The calculation of the numerical equivalence of letters, words, or phrases, helps us gain insight into relationships between different concepts, words, and ideas. The assumption behind Gematria is that numerical equivalence is not coincidental. Since the world was created through God's speech, each letter represents a different creative force. Thus, the numerical equivalence of two words reveals an internal connection between the creative potentials of each one. In order to get a taste of how this discipline is used in the study of Kabbalah, we will present a few examples, each one applying the wisdom of Gematria to reveal a truth in a unique way. The first example we saw above, the numerical value of the Hebrew word Kabbalah, which is written in Hebrew, is 137. 137 is also the combined value of the Hebrew words for wisdom, written, and equal to 73, and prophecy, written, and equal to 64, as noted above. It follows therefore that Kabbalah chapter 5, letters building blocks of the universe, 73 includes both powers of wisdom and prophecy. As it turns out, and is discussed in length above, Kabbalah actually is the offspring of these two traditions in the study of the Torah. At times, words or phrases that are equal in their numerical value seem to clash in meaning. For example, the numerical value of the Hebrew word for humility, spelled, is 410, as is the numerical value of the word for arrogance, written. In Hebrew, these words also mean low tide and high tide, respectively, as clear a pair of opposites as can be found. In such cases, the two words either rectify or complement one another. Thus, humility is the sentiment and faculty, as will be seen later, that can rectify one's arrogance and feelings of self-centeredness. Likewise, low tide is the complement, the other side of the coin, of high tide. Incidentally, many people have come to think of Gematria as mere sophistry because they mistakenly believe that anything can be shown to be equal to anything. There are indeed some Gematria analyses that are less informative than others, but on the whole they all carry some meaning. The more surprising the Gematria, the more information content it carries. One such surprising Gematria is that the Hebrew word for Messiah, 358, is equal to the Hebrew word for the primordial serpent. Kabbalah and Chassanet explain this numerical equality in length, the short of the matter being that it is only the Messiah himself who will be able to do final battle with the primordial serpent, the symbol of our evil inclination, conquer it, kill its external manifestation while simultaneously domesticating it and placing its inner essence under his control. Many gematrias need to be analyzed symbolically. Except for the 5 books of Moses, because of the nature of prophecy, most of the Bible uses symbolic language. Because of this, and because of the need to relate amorphous and non-corporeal ideas, most of the exegetic tradition in Judaism is rich in symbolic language. For instance, when discussing the topic of love, Chassidic discourses, calling upon various biblical sources, note that there are different types of love. There is love that is likened to water, love that is 74. What you need to know about Kabbalah likened to fire, and love that is likened to pleasure. Water, fire, and pleasure are obviously symbolic and are meant to describe in a more palpable way the nature of different states of love. Chassidut explains that natural love, a natural sense of affinity and attraction between two souls or between man and God, is likened to water. This is the love of brother to sister, always present in the heart and requiring no more than a thought of one another to arouse and bring into consciousness. On the other hand, love of God that is likened to fire, as the love between spouses, is aroused by meditation, especially meditation upon the unity and singularity of the Creator. Every Jew is commanded to meditate upon God's unity at least twice daily by reciting the first verse of the passage in Deuteronomy known, for its first word, as the Shema. Hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. 3. The next verse states that from this meditation is born love for God, and you shall love God your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Now to our gematria, the numerical value of the Hebrew word for a flame, particularly the glowing flame in a red-hot coal, which can be used to light a fire, is 737. This is also the numerical value of the Hebrew phrase describing the love that the Shema meditation enheartens, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. This gematria reveals the functional underpinnings of a very complex process in the human experience. Meditation acts as a flame and kindles love that is likened to fire. But what exactly is love that is likened to fire? From this gematria we learn that it is the love described as loving God with all your heart, soul, and might. Of course, there is still much to be understood in the way of defining what heart, soul, and might are, but this gematria provides a primary working definition that can lead to a deeper understanding of what meditation can arouse in our lives. To add a little cherry on top, note that the numerical value of the Hebrew word used to describe God's unity and singularity, 1, is 13, exactly the value of the word for love, indicating a contextual relationship between the subject of the meditation, God's unity, and its outcome, love. 4 Chapter 5, Letters Building Blocks of the Universe. 75 God and Nature. One of the most frequently cited gematrias has to do with a Hebrew word that did not even exist until the Middle Ages, hateva, which means nature. There is no word for nature in biblical, nor rabbinic Hebrew. The word used today was first coined somewhere in the middle part of the medieval age. Its etymology is apparently related to the verb meaning to stamp 5, which is used in the sense of stamping a coin with an image. We mention this because it is a beautiful example of how Judaism understands that the natural world is stamped, figuratively, with the signature of the Almighty. We have noted that God has many names in Hebrew, which we will discuss in full in Part 3 of this book. Nature possesses the identical numerical value, 86, as does one of the names of God, Elohim, implying that this name of God is most closely associated with nature. This equivalence is especially significant because Elohim is the name used to describe God as the Creator in the first chapter of Genesis. Furthermore, Elohim appears exactly 32 times in the story of the 6 days of creation, alluding to the 32 pathways of wisdom, with which Sefer Yetzirah says that God created the world. The lunar cycle and the human body. Another fascinating example of how gematria works comes from the book of Ecclesiastes 6. In a well-known passage from it, King Solomon states that there is a time for everything, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. 76. What you need to know about Kabbalah: a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, and a time to sow, a time to keep silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. In all, there are 28 instances of one of the Hebrew words for time, which divide into 14 pairs, one positive time in contrast with its negative counterpart. The number 28 is intrinsically associated with a lunar month, which is made up of 4 7-day lunar quarters totaling 28 days. The waxing and the waning of the moon thus represent the full cycle of terrestrial time. These 28 times are also alluded to in the verse, "In your hand are my times." 7. But the allusion is not just the use of the same word, time in Ecclesiastes and times in this verse, an analytic method known in rabbinic methodology as Gezer Shava. Rather, we can use gematria to illustrate a beautiful example of self-reference, a textual phenomenon in which something relates back to itself. If the first letter of the word, which serves as the prefix letter bet, meaning in, is understood as a gematria, equals 2, then the revised meaning of the word would be your 2 hands. Continuing this thread of thought and taking the Hebrew word for hand, we see that its numerical value is 14.8. Since there are 2 hands, then we are speaking of 2. 14 equals 28, referring to the 28 times, which are, symbolically, always in the hands of God. As noted above, the 28 times divide into 14 positive times, symbolized by the right hand, and 14 negative times, symbolized by the left hand. So in this particular example of gematria, we have analyzed each part of a word separately, and based on this analysis reconstructed an alternate, albeit revealing commentary on a particular verse 9 chapter 5, letters building blocks of the universe. 77. Now, let us take the ideas just introduced another step further and continue to develop them with the help of gematria. According to the sages, each hand possesses 30 ibrim, usually translated as limbs, but actually referring to sections of human bone and flesh that would cause ritual impurity when dead. 10 Together, the 2 hands possess 60 such parts, which themselves allude to the secret of the 60 letters that make up the priestly blessing in its original Hebrew. 11. The equality between the number of letters in the priestly blessing and the number of parts in the hands offers one explanation for why the priests raise their hands when reciting this blessing in front of the congregation. The light of each of the 60 letters emanates from one of the 60 parts of the priest's hands. Because each hand has 30 parts, each is represented by the Hebrew letter lamed, whose numerical value is 30. The great medieval Kabbalist, Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, showed that when 2 letters lamed are drawn so as to face one another they form the physical shape of the heart. Indeed, this same idea is alluded to in the word heart in Hebrew, which is spelled a lamed followed by a bet, which as we saw above is equal to 2, implying that a heart is actually 2 letters lamed. From this we learn that spiritual energy and blessing flows from the heart to the 2 hands and from the hands, in the priestly blessing, to the people of Israel. 12 Returning to the numerical value of the word hand in Hebrew, which is 14, we note that in the 5 books of Moses, the grammatical root of healing appears exactly 14 times. Hand in Hebrew can also mean power, or ability. These 14 instances of healing imply a spiritual connection between healing and the power of the hand, suggesting that there is healing power in the physician's hand. Another important gematria related to healing, according to Kabbalah, disease and pain derive from a state of spiritual 78. What you need to know about Kabbalah deficiency or emptiness. In Kabbalah, the state of spiritual wholeness is associated with the number 50.13. Indeed, the numerical value of the Hebrew word for someone who is sick is 49, 1 less than 50, indicating that a sick person is lacking in the spiritual wholeness necessary for good health. By corollary, healing is the act of filling or completing the patient's spiritual state of being. We have offered a small sampling of how gematria is used in Kabbalah. Throughout our other volumes you may find many others, as well. One small remaining caveat is that we have only been using zero-dimensional gematria, that is, where each letter is simply replaced by a number. To fully appreciate the power of gematria, it is necessary to present numbers in multidimensional geometric or figure-8 forms. But that is a topic for a forthcoming volume. Notes: 1. See the Hebrew letters, Channels of Creative Consciousness for an in-depth introduction to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. 2. Tanya, Sher HaYichud v'Ha'emina, chapters 1 and 12. 3. Deuteronomy 6:4. God, in the translation of this verse, refers to the name Elukim. 4. When the values of these two words, one, and love, in Hebrew are added together, both equal 13, we get 26, the gematria, numerical value, of God's essential name, Havaya, as explained. 5. This word also means to drown. 6. Ecclesiastes 3:2-8. 7. Psalms 31:16. 8. Incidentally, there are exactly 14 revealed phalanges, bones of the digits, in each hand, beautifully relating the Hebrew word for hand with the hand itself. 9. For another example of this type of mixed analysis, see The Art of Education, pages 119. Chapter 5, Letters Building Blocks of the Universe. 79:10. Mishnah Achalot 1:8. There are a total of 248 such body parts, or limbs, which is also the number of positive commandments in the 5 books of Moses. 11. Numbers 6:24-26, which translated means, May God bless you and protect you. May God shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God turn his countenance toward you and grant you peace. 12. See our website for mystical jewelry based on Rabbi Abulafia's teaching, www.inner.org/jewelry.13. The original term is 50 gates of purity, which correspond to the 50 gates of understanding and are related to the 32 paths of wisdom. For more on understanding and wisdom, see Chapter 7. Sephirot, divine energy. 6. Probably the best known Hebrew word that Kabbalah is responsible for introducing to non-Hebrew speakers is Sephirah, not to be confused with the English sphere and its plural form, Sephirot. This is because the most fundamental model used in Kabbalah is that of the 10 Sephirot. Like many other words used in Kabbalah, the most practical approach for getting a sense of what it refers to is by looking at its various meanings in biblical Hebrew. In Hebrew, the meanings of a word can be studied only by first finding the word's grammatical root and then looking at all the different usages, the different nouns or verbs that the root is used in. The 3-letter root of the word Sephirah, Samek Perish, bears 3 distinct meanings that are relevant to the word itself. First, this root is used in the sense of an emanation of divine light. Sephirah is derived from the biblical sapphire, meaning sapphire, whose brilliance is associated with a heavenly throne envisioned by the prophets. 1. The word Sephirah also denotes a specific attribute or trait through which God expresses himself in the world. In this sense, God is like an author of a book that expresses himself through the narrative he writes. The Hebrew words for story, sipper, and book, sefer, are from the root of Sephirah. Finally, the Hebrew word for number, misper, derives from the root of Sephirah, alluding to the abstract underlying mathematical structure of creation. Because of its varied meanings, special attention must be paid to the word Sephirah. Even though in Kabbalah it always designates Chapter 6, Sephirot, divine energy, 81, a divine emanation, nonetheless, its meaning fluctuates with the context in which it is being used. In general, the 3 major contextual usages of the 10 Sephirot are, 1. The 10 manifestations of God. 2. The 10 powers or faculties of the soul. Or, 3. The 10 structural forces of nature. In Hasidic terminology, these 3 contexts are considered the 3 basic dimensions of reality. In the terminology of Chassanet they are called divinity, souls, and worlds too. When speaking of the manner in which God's self-expression is perceived, the 10 Sephirot are understood as 10 manifestations of divinity. We find this phenomenon reflected in the 4 letters of the essential name of God, Havaya, each of which corresponds to a Sephirah, or group of Sephirot, as will be explained later. When reflecting on how divinity is projected into the living experience of a human being, the Sephirot become manifest as the 10 powers of the soul. Finally, we find that the Sephirot are also cast as the basic structural forces orchestrated in forming our external reality, for example the components of our bodies. In this chapter, we will examine the meaning of each of the 10 Sephirot within all 3 contexts. Note that though we usually speak of 10 Sephirot, we will be discussing a model with 11 Sephirot. This is because 2 of the Sephirot, crown and knowledge, are 2 dimensions of a single force, as will become clearer as we progress. The model of the Sephirot in Kabbalistic texts, especially those following the revelation of the teachings of the Arizal, the Sephirot are configured, and graphically depicted, as lying along 3 parallel vertical axes, like so, 82. What you need to know about Kabbalah. Keter crown? Bina understanding? Chakma wisdom? Dat knowledge? Gevura might? Chest loving kindness? Tiferet beauty? Hod acknowledgement? Netzach victory? Yesod foundation? Malkut kingdom. Each axis represents a mode of divine influence within creation. In the idiom of the Tikkun Zohar, one of the earlier Kabbalistic texts, the axes are described as one is long, one is short, and one is intermediate. The left axis is relatively short compared to the right axis, while the middle axis acts as a harmonizing and balancing force between them, hence its description as an intermediate. The adjectives short and long associated with the left and right axes provide a visual metaphor for the delimiting, shortening, as it were, powers inherent in the Sephirot lying along the left axis as opposed to the expansive, lengthening, powers of the Sephirot lying along the right axis. In more anthropomorphic language, the long right axis exhibits the attributes of patience and forgiveness, while the short left axis tends to alacrity and Chapter 6, Sephirot divine energy. 83. Forceful judgment, with the middle axis providing a balanced inter-inclusion of the two. This visual configuration of the Sephirot is variously referred to in Kabbalistic literature as a ladder, 3 a tree, 4 or as the supernal image of God. According to this last designation, the configuration of the Sephirot suggests both the physical image and the psychological spiritual makeup of the human being, as they were fashioned in the image of God, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." 5. Thus, based on its position in this configuration, each sephira is associated with a corresponding limb or organ in the human anatomy. 6. The interaction between the various sephirot is depicted through a network of connecting channels that parallel the flow of divine energy within creation. Their interactions suggest a division of the sephirot into 3 basic subgroupings, each subgroup reflecting a common dynamic among the sephirot included therein. The 3 subgroupings are intellectual, or cognitive, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge; emotive, loving kindness, might, and beauty; behavioral, or active, victory, acknowledgement, and foundation. This accounts for only 9 of the 11 sephirot appearing in the diagram. The first sephira, crown, represents the super-intellectual, that which is beyond reason and common sense, normally represented by faith, and in a certain sense can be viewed as superimposed on this diagram from a different plane. The last sephira, kingdom, can be viewed as either an appendage of the last subgrouping, or as an independent entity receiving all the energies that precede it. Sephirot and divinity, the story of creation. Though the word sephira should definitely be understood as carrying all 3 of the meanings noted above, when explaining the role of the sephirot as they pertain to the creative process, we 84. What you need to know about Kabbalah. Stress the second meaning which links it with the idea of writing or narrative. The Torah narrative of creation can be found in the first 2 chapters of the book of Genesis. However, in Kabbalistic and Chassidic writings the act of creation is not considered a one-time occurrence. Instead, because creation is meant to reveal the Almighty, it is actually an ongoing process, one that occurs at every instance and through which God is revealed to us anew, and differently, at every moment. Because creation is a recurring process, the role of the sephirot is even more essential, as every moment of time can be analyzed as based on the particular nature and functionality of the sephira currently active. It should be stated clearly from the outset that the Almighty, as He exists unto Himself, cannot be understood or even spoken about using any kind of human thought or language. Instead, man can meet God only through the prism of created reality. Through that prism, God appears to us in the form and manner that He chooses. 7. The Torah describes the Almighty in terms of the 13 divine attributes, also called the 13 principles of divine mercy, with which God revealed Himself to Moses. 8. Kabbalah reveals that the 13 divine attributes actually stem from the 10 sephirot. 9. The sages expound that the Almighty created the world with 10 utterances, or acts of divine speech, that appear in Genesis 10. Each of the 10 utterances is a unique manner in which God reveals Himself, for as already said, the basic prism through which He can be known is the act of creation. In the context of creation, The Sephirot represent the various stages of the process whereby God generated from within His own infinite being the progression of created realms that culminates in our finite physical universe. Outside of the creative process itself, but still within the context of divinity, the Sephirot function together as the components of a single metaphysical structure whose generative imprint can be identified at all levels, and within all aspects, of creation. Like the recurring motifs or themes in a novel, Chapter 6, Sephirot Divine Energy? 85. In this capacity, the model of the 10 Sephirot acts as a repeating structure in the universe, signing everything with the signature of the Almighty. One last word about the Sephirot in general. Each of the 10 Sephirot comprises both a light and a vessel. Simply, the light of the Sephirah is the divine energy flowing within it. The vessel is the form or identity that the flow of energy takes in order to relate to some aspect of the world in a specific way. Inasmuch as all existence was created by means of the Sephirot, they constitute the conceptual paradigm for understanding all reality. Divine energy itself appears in one of three forms known as light, life force, and energy. 11. Keter, the crown. The first of the 10 Sephirot, corresponds to the superconscious realm of experience. The image of a crown suggests that the faculties pertaining to this Sephirah surround and envelope one's consciousness like an aura. That is why in Chassidut, the Sephirah of crown is identified with our superconscious realm. It is the spiritual counterpart of all of the soul's faculties and powers that are not directly observable or directly harnessable. But, even as the crown is above and beyond all that is revealed and normal, it is also directly linked with the lowest, most mundane and most present of all the Sephirot, kingdom. As the introduction to the Tikkun Zohar states, the supernal crown is the crown of kingdom. The numerical value of this Sephirah's Hebrew name is 620. This is the full number of God's commandments to Israel, the 613 commandments of the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, together with the 7 commandments of the oral Torah. 12. The Hebrew text of the 10 commandments 13 comprises 620 letters, hinting that all 620 commandments of the Torah are included within them. 14. In Kabbalah, the 620 commandments are referred to as 620 pillars of light that project from the crown. The 86. What you need to know about Kabbalah's ceiling, to connect it with the Sephirah of kingdom, the floor. In Chassidut it is explained that these pillars of light encompass the souls of Israel that devotedly fulfill the will of the King of Kings. Chokmah, wisdom, the second of the 10 Sephirot, is the first cognitive power of conscious intellect and is the primary force of creation by the Almighty. Wisdom implies the ability to look deeply at some aspect of reality and ponder its essence until one succeeds in uncovering its axiomatic truth. These seeds of truth can then be conveyed to wisdom's companion power, understanding, for the sake of intellectual analysis and development. Wisdom is the primary force in the creative process, as the Psalms declare, "You, God, have made them all with wisdom." 15. The first word of the Torah, 16. Bereshit, which is usually translated as "in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," is translated by the Targum Yerushalmi, a Mishnah Akira translation and commentary of the Torah in Aramaic, as, "With wisdom, God created the heavens and the earth." The full numerical value of the first verse of the Torah, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," is 2701, which is the sum of all numbers from 1 to 73, denoted in arithmetic as the triangle of 73. 73 is the numerical value of wisdom. Binah, understanding is the third of the 10 Sephirot, and the second conscious power of intellect in creation. The name understanding implies the ability to examine the degree of truth or falsehood inherent in a particular idea. This power of analysis is associated in the Bible with the sense of hearing. The ear examines words. 17. The most well-known example of this association can be found in the quintessential tenet Chapter 6, Sephirot Divine Energy. 87. Of Judaism, "Hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one." 18. Where the word hearing means understanding. Another intellectual trait identified with the Sephirah of understanding is the ability to clearly explain and elucidate concepts, both to oneself and to others, and as such it is symbolized in Kabbalah as the wide river. 19. The Hebrew word for understanding, binah, shares the same grammatical root as the word bin, which means between. Thus understanding possesses the intellectual power to distinguish and differentiate between ideas or objects. Understanding is considered the second brain, sometimes described as lying between wisdom and knowledge. In Kabbalah, wisdom and understanding are referred to as the father and the mother. Their union is called the higher union. The higher union is constant, and therefore these two Sephirot are referred to in the Zohar as two companions that never separate. 20. The higher union is necessary for sustaining our reality, which is manifested through the continual recreation of the world. Numerically, the sum of wisdom equals 73, and understanding equals 67, is 140, which is also the sum of all square numbers from 1 to 7, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49 equals 140. This numerical equality reveals that the union of wisdom and understanding is indeed the spiritual source of the 7 days of creation, the 7 children. In the minds of the father and mother, the children are present in their ultimate state of perfection. A square number represents a perfected state of being. Dat, knowledge. The Sephirah of knowledge is the third and last of the conscious powers of intellect in creation. 21. Generally, knowledge is only enumerated among the Sephirot when crown is not. This is because knowledge serves as a reflection of the inner dimension of the crown, which itself lies beyond the realm of consciousness. For this same reason, 88. What you need to know about Kabbalah knowledge appears in the configuration of the Sephirot along the middle axis, directly beneath crown. Knowledge is associated with the powers of memory and concentration, powers that rely upon one's sensitivity to the potential meaningfulness of those ideas generated in consciousness through the powers of wisdom and understanding. This sensitivity is in its essence super-rational and derives from the connection that knowledge has to crown. In the Zohar, knowledge is referred to as the key that includes 6. 22. Similar to the metaphor of a lock and key discussed above, in Chapter 4, knowledge is the intellectual key to the 6 chambers of the heart, a symbolic name for the Sephirot from loving-kindness to foundation, and fills them with life force. Each of these chambers, when filled with knowledge, is referred to as a particular daya, meaning an attitude of the soul. The numerical value of daya is 79. And 79. 6 equals 474, the numerical value of dat. Chest, loving-kindness. Loving-kindness is the fourth of the 10 Sephirot, and the first of the emotive attributes within creation. Loving-kindness is represented by the first day of creation. On this day God created